Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks provides unique mentoring opportunities to enhance your modeling skills by connecting with talented modelers and manufacturers from around the globe who generously share their knowledge and artistic expertise. Build your confidence, refine modeling techniques, and share your projects with a supportive community of fellow modelers, all while enjoying the world's most rewarding hobby. Join us every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Zoom and YouTube for our free live program. Missed a program? No problem. Individual show segments are uploaded to YouTube for convenient on-demand viewing. Be sure to connect with the New Tracks community by joining the New Tracks Facebook page where you can interact with other modelers and see what they are modeling. Visit our website at www.newtracksmodeling.com, where you'll find information about upcoming events and the latest issue of our monthly newsletter, Observations. And now, here is the host of New Tracks.
Cut that off a little early. Good evening, I'm Tom Farrell. I'm your host this evening. I'm the new host for New Tracks Modeling. Appreciate you joining the show this evening. We have a exciting program for you this evening. We've got a very comprehensive program. We're featuring about 6 presenters. And Phil, if you could pop up the program. First up, we're going to have David Schultz. His program, News and Views, O-Scale, 2-rail modeling. He has an interesting O-Scale on the road. I personally have experience with modeling on the road. I think you'll find this exciting. O-Scale, high-rail modeling with Dennis Brennan, photo composition. This will be a educational video on how to compose model railroad photographs. Dennis and I had a good time with this a couple of days ago, just talking composition and do's and don'ts, and I found it very engaging. S-scale modeling, there's a nice segment on converting heavyweight Pullman cars. I think you'll like that. It's a bit of kit bashing. Our very own Phil Edholm, he has a national contest winner. It's going to be a 4-part series. He's going to show you 3D printing and acrylic modeling. Very different technique, especially with the acrylic. Our Martin Brechbiel, Scratchbuilder's Corner. When you have children, you never want to say you have your favorite child, and I have to admit that my very favorite program of all, not to embarrass Phil, or not to embarrass Martin, is his Scratchbuilder's Corner. Very humorous. We have a guest tonight, Bob Geldmacher, on Steve Sherrill's Narrow Minded show. Every, at least once a month, maybe more often, we're going to feature narrow gauge. And Steve will either handle that himself or have guest people on board. I'm going to give you an update on my shantytown scene on my Rustic Buff and Old Gothic. Father Ron will handle the closing. And I hope you stick around for the Pittsburg high rail layout. This is probably the largest 3-rail O-gauge layout I've ever seen. We estimate it's got to be $1 million layout. So stick around for the whole program. I'm going to do a little intro before we begin. First, I want to thank Jim Kello for stepping back and letting me be your host. I hope I can move this forward. We're a pretty interesting group, us model railroaders. The neat thing about model railroading is it's so diverse, all the skills, all the things you learn, the carpentry, the electrical work, analog and digital electronics, painting, photography, sculpture, scratch building, rolling stock, structures. I mean, it really pushes creativity and our craftsmanship skills. But really, what really sets us apart from other hobbies is our relentless pursuit of fresh ideas and techniques. and cutting edge technology. It's amazing how much technology is in model railroading. And one of the things that we're going to show going forward with New Tracks modeling is we're going to lead the way in showcasing not only traditional model making, but some of the latest advancements in the hobby. For example, New Tracks, we intend to regularly, we're going to feature, and we have featured in the past, segments on wireless dead rail systems. I think everybody knows these are powered by advancements in battery technology and miniaturized components. You don't need track power, let you focus on creativity rather than maintaining track. Similarly, 3D printing is a frequent topic because it's really another avenue of the future of the hobby. It gives us ways to create custom parts with high precision and low cost. This evening we'll have segments both on ON18, ON30 wireless, and we will have something on 3D printing. Another couple of things that we have not featured on New Tracks, but we intend to, is artificial intelligence and virtual reality to influence the hobby. This gives you tools to visualize and plan layouts before construction even begins, or even structures, for example. You don't have to do a whole layout. So you could ask AI to give you give me a turn of the century wooden depot, and it'll pop one up for you. And from that, you can gain ideas, or even eventually, 3 to 5 years from now, tell it to laser cut or print something. I mean, these are all directions the hobby could go in. There's also smartphone applications, which your smartphone can now control your train switches, lighting, signals. I saw a demonstration at the Pittsburg narrow gauge show of a guy running digital command right off the phone. It was pretty neat. You didn't need the conventional DCC controller. So upcoming New Tracks presentations will explore these topics and their practical applications in model railroading. So, our mission is basically to bring these things to the show, make it more exciting, so hobbyists at all levels, from beginners to us old guys, learn about all these new technologies. And this is particularly important to the youth. If we can make this an exciting, entertaining, technical, for the youth, we'll draw in these young modelers, which are the future of the hobby. I want to remind everybody that our show, New Tracks Modeling, airs every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. on YouTube and Zoom. And all these episodes are recorded, segmented, and available on YouTube for eventual viewing at any time. Next, I would like to run our video for our sponsor, our sponsor of New Tracks Modeling Live, Brennan's Model Railroading. So Phil, if you could run that video.
Tonight's New Tracks Modeling Meetup is sponsored by Brennan's Model Railroading. For over 25 years, Brennan's Model Railroading has been offering unique products focused on the O-scale market. Their flagship product, Brennan's Better Ballast, was an instant hit and continues to be the industry leader. The prototypical size and natural color blend of real crushed granite make it the choice for discerning modelers. Since then, Brennan's has developed a complementary line of natural ground cover materials. Brennan's also has craftsman kits that anyone can build. The complete photographically illustrated instructions assume you've never done this before, and explain in step-by-step detail how to create an outstanding model. The Frank Ellison Tribute series of kits are amazing additions to any layout. These kits take Frank Ellison's scratch-built iconic structures to a new level using modern methods and materials with Dennis Brennan's additional details and amazing instructions. See the complete line of products on the Brennan's Model Railroading website. Use the QR code to visit.
Okay, now I'd like to start the show. And our first segment is news and views, O-scale, two-rail modeling. And the topic is O-scale on the road. And this is by David Schultz. And David, thank you for joining the show.
Well, you are most welcome. Glad to be here. So tonight we're going to talk about O-scale on the road, and actually the program I have, almost any scale can do this. I had a good friend years ago. He used to work for a phone company, and one of his jobs was to go out into way out in the North Dakota countryside and monitor a microwave tower. And it was as long as everything was working, he basically just sat in a little office. Well, he discovered he could take modeling projects with himself out to these remote stations and work on models all day and get paid by the phone company to do it. So when I started working for the railroad, I decided, that's not a bad idea. I could do little things on the road and then build the bigger models at home. So like my passenger cars, I could build interiors and such. But anyway, if you want to show that first photo that I put on there, whoever's in charge of that.
Phil. There you go.
Excellent. Yeah, I like that. Anyway, go to the first photo showing the briefcase. I bought these, I used to be able to buy them at the local home store type thing, and they quit handling them. And a friend of mine said Harbor Freight has some still in stock. So I went to Harbor Freight and bought two of these for about $34 a piece. They're probably, I didn't measure them, but I think they're like 18 inches by 12 inches by 6 inches deep. And they come with foam inside. They're meant to be for drills or any power tool that you have. And you can tear out the foam that you need to put the parts in there. So as I get close to finishing models, I'll tear out the foam and set the car in there and pack it away. And anyway, next photo, please. Here you can see I've got a whole bunch of 40-foot trailers inside one of the briefcases, and you can see the foam in there. And when you close that lid to snap it down, it holds everything good and tight. It works out really well. So while I'm in Birmingham here for the month, I decided to bring the trailers with me and start finishing those up. Okay, next slide. Here you can see some of the tools that I bring along. I've got my cutting pad there, some sandpaper, the little chopper. I've got a much better one at home, but it's a little big and cumbersome. This one fits in the briefcase really well. I also use 3 cigar cases, and that's where I'll put my X-Acto knives, all the little tools that I need. Glues go in one. I think the next slide shows some of that a little better. Yeah, here are the middle ones carrying the glues. I've got the X-Acto blades in there. I've got some wire with me, glasses. Unfortunately, I need glasses these days to work on models. And the next one. And I even bring along some plastic. I tend to, when I have scrap plastic left over, I glue it into blocks. And then those blocks, probably 1/8 inch thick or so. And then I can use those blocks and I'll measure them up. So if I have a project that requires something that's 24 inches, I've already got some blocks already glued together. And I find that I also keep some, the 20,000ths and 10,000ths. And yeah, don't you love the cigar pricing? But anyway, you can glue all the plastic together into thicker pieces if you need them, or leave them in thin pieces. But anyway, one of the boxes I carry spare plastic, even some wood blocks with me. Next one. And this is a little plastic bin that I carry with me. I can wrap these items up in bubble wrap and set them in these little plastic carrying cases, clear tubs, so you can see what's inside them and snap the lid on the top and carry these with me too. And I've got a couple of those with me. I'm going to finish up some of these air slide hoppers that I started building years ago and just never really got around to doing it. I've also down there, and this is one of those things while I was working on the railroad, the Northern Pacific had a boxcar that was 1.5 doors. They had an 8-foot door and a 6'6" door that was used for various items. Well, I've taken 2 Atlas boxcars and I started cutting them apart, basically flat kitting them. I cut the sides off, cut the roof off, cut the floor off. And then I converted everything And I'm ready to start gluing those parts back together to make that 40-foot door and a half car. So this is some of the stuff I was able to take on the road with me. I think that's the last photo I have.
David,
So anyway, it's kind of a short program tonight because I'm on the road. I was sick over Christmas because that's what you do over Christmas. So anyway, put together this little program. If, like I say, these little cases, you can even find them on Amazon. They're a little more expensive. It's the first time I've found where something on Amazon was more expensive than what was at Harbor Freight. But I don't know if they're closing them out or whatever, but they are handy, and they're aluminum, so they hold up really well on the road. You can bang them around a little bit and hold stuff in there nicely. But anyway, that was kind of my handy hints for this segment.
Hey, David, in January of 2022, I had to go out to California, Sacramento I live in Bloomington, Indiana. And I think most of you know, I had a cancer treatment out there for a month, and I was stuck in a hotel room for a month. And what I did is I did exactly what you did. I brought materials and things, and I scratch built 2 structures. And one of the neat things about, although I'd been to Sacramento before, I'd never really tracked down any hobby shops. And yes, there still are some hobby shops out there in the world.
Yep.
When I ran out of supplies and things, I would Uber, since I didn't have a rental car, Uber over hobby shop, and I got to know of course I can't remember the guy's name now, but the hobby shop in Sacramento, I got to meet these guys, a whole group of fellas, and told them why I was there, and gave me something to do in between my treatments. And at the end of the month, I had 2 structures. So,
Yeah.
you know, it was a neat experience.
Yeah, a friend of mine that I told you about in the beginning with the working at the phone company, he built a lot of models over the years. Because unless there was a problem out there with the microwave towers, that shows you how long ago the worked for the phone company. But I mean, he sat there for day after day after day, and nothing went wrong. Well, you just sat in that office waiting for an alarm to go off. Well, he'd build models. And then he said what was really slick is if his supervisor showed up, you'd hear him coming through the door. He could just slap the lid shut on that briefcase and set it on the floor, and nobody thought anything of it. But yeah, I've built a lot of stuff, like say in hotel rooms, and even just to take bits and pieces that are kind of tedious, things you have to do a lot of sanding on or grinding and stuff. You can bring those parts along, and instead of wasting time on your modeling bench, you do it while you're sitting in a hotel room. If you're on the road, like I was a lot. Works out really slick. I built a lot of stuff out of those 2 briefcases.
The only casualty on my trip was the desk in the hotel room. It was a little worse for wear from all glue and paint. They probably wondered what exactly was I doing. But,
yeah, the hotel asked me what I was doing because there were little scratch marks here and there where the blade would slip off the cutting pad and go across the desk, and I tried to polish those up as best I could. But they asked me what I was doing, and I told them. They kind of got a kick out of that. But
I have to admit, I ruined their desk. Thank you for this evening. And this segment was sponsored by O-Scale Central. And Phil, if you have that available, we can run that now.
I'm David Vaughn of O-Scale Central. O-Scale 2-rail, models built to 1:48 scale and running on 2-rail track, is the best-kept secret in model railroading. We're pleased to team with Jim Kello to introduce O-Scale 2-rail to New Track's viewers. O-Scale 2-rail is for modelers. At twice the scale and 8 times the mass of HO, O-Scale's heft and ease of modeling create an outstanding model railroading experience. O-Scale 2-rail modeling is as varied as railroading itself. Modern era, transition or old time, standard gauge or narrow. A wide variety of models is available at affordable prices. There is a supportive community and lots of shows, clubs, and events. You can explore O-Scale 2-rail by going to our website, oscalecentral.com. You will find information about the scale and how to get started, as well as a free, searchable, scale-wide product and service guide and listings of coming O-Scale events. You will also find information about how to join O-Scale Central. We promote O-Scale 2-rail and support modelers in the scale. When your eyes are going bifocular, when you need fresh challenges, Keep O-Scale 2-Rail in mind. Check us out, oscalecentral.com. Thanks.
Next up, we have news and views, O-Scale high rail modeling. This evening, Dennis Brennan, our host for this segment, is going to talk about photo composition. You know, a lot of the photos that you see from Dennis, from myself, from the late Al Judy, and from some of the other modelers, they are not accidents. There is a methodology to composition, and there are, Dennis and I had a really fascinating conversation a couple of days ago on this. We could have talked, I don't know, for hours on this. I just, again, Dennis, I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation, and I hope this evening our viewers can learn some tips. We agreed that there is some natural art to taking photographs, but by the same token, there are techniques that you can use to improve your photographs. One thing I took away, Dennis did a similar program on New Tracks a couple of years ago, and I remember distinctly he said, when you're taking a photograph, be aware of your depth of field and never have the front of your photograph out of focus. And I filed that away in my as a tip. And what I'm hoping this evening is that you too will file away a couple tips and learn a little about composition. And you'll be surprised just how the techniques are not complicated. It's really a discipline. So with that intro, Dennis, have at it.
Thanks, Tom. And yes, I enjoyed our conversation too. It's much fun for me to talk about this. All right, so let's go to the first thing. We are going to talk about composition. And there's a simple rule, and it's not a hard and fast rule, but it really might help you if you feel like you're compositionally challenged. And that's called the rule of thirds. So let's go to the first slide. Okay, now this is a photograph that I took of the Sandy Harbor Railroad. And I just want you to look at it and just let it seep into your head. Look at where the engine is. Look at where all the things are. See if you can figure out what the scene is telling you. Now let's put in the rule of thirds. All right, here you go. Now, what is the rule of thirds? Well, the rule of thirds means that you'll notice that in the center of the frame, see that rectangle right in the center? Really, the subject is not there. The main subject. What is the main subject? Well, the main subject is that engine. And what's going on in the scene? We have a couple guys looking at it. We have cars that are stopped for the railroad crossing. And Tom pointed out something that I didn't ever think about in the way he said it. He said there's a certain tension created by the two cars that you see there. Why? Because they're stopped and the guy behind them is pulled up right against his bumper. And you'll notice the engine is perfectly framed between the crossing signals. Okay. Now, the rule of thirds means that you don't put an object in the center, but anywhere where there's an intersection of lines is where you can locate your subject. Now, that's not a hard and fast rule. Okay. Rules are made to be broken, but before you can break them, you have to know what they are. All right. So you'll notice that the engine is in the left third of the picture. Now, it could be up higher or lower, but compositionally, that's where it needs to be, right there. And we're going to talk about a few of the little tiny details too. Quickly, look at the little culvert on the left side of the photo on the bottom. And you also see a little pile of bricks right kind of in the center, lower center of the photo. These are all little tiny details that add so much to the scene. And the wooden fence. All right, let's go to the next slide.
Second on this, Dennis, go back a second.
Yeah. All right.
One thing, Dennis, tell them that the people are staring right at the locomotive. So the
Yes.
figures are staring at the locomotive, and the track goes from the bottom right-hand corner and draws your eyes right to the locomotive, which is framed by those two crossing gates. I mean, this is no accident. So I don't mean to interrupt, but I think that's
No, that's fine.
pretty critical because this photograph, Dennis and I were talking. This is an award winner here, compositionally. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, thank you, Tom. Yes, the leading lines is something we'll talk about, and I'm glad that you brought that up. That track leads you right into it. People are looking at it. So you have to look where, your eye naturally goes there. All right. Next slide. Okay, here again. Let's just put the lines in right away. All right. Now look where the diesel engine is. That is right on that intersection, right? Now, really, this is about a lot of different things. Reflections were a main thing that I was concerned with here. Trying to get the nice reflection in the water. And nothing in these photos is ever an accident. That engine was purposely put in that position. I didn't just stop the engine and then position the camera. I find the scene, and the other thing about composition is it's not just a matter of putting something into that section. It's a matter of where is the camera? What height is the camera at? Okay. And you also have to think about balance in a photograph, positive and negative space. The negative space in this photo is really where there's not too much happening, which is where the water is. Now, what's important about the water is the reflection. But you see that that's a very simple plane. Above it is all of the information, the engine, and then the buildings in the background. Well, the engine and the buildings in the background and the bridge, that's all the positive stuff. The negative space is everything else. And there has to be a balance between the two of them. All right, next slide. All right, now here's another example of a composition that leads you right where I want you to look. Notice how the buildings are receding. Okay, I purposely, and the street is angled. We're not shooting straight on. Now, on the layout, this street also angles into it. Diagonal lines are always more attractive than a straight line. You have to always think, get out of the rectilinear world and thinking. Get out of the box and try to angle things. And that's not just using your camera to angle it, but this whole street angled right off the layout. And stage plays use the same thing. You'll see somebody walk from upstage left to downstage, or upstage right, left to downstage right, or opposite. Actually, downstage and upstage, doesn't matter. But notice again, your eye goes right from that street. You see the sidewalk and the gates. The engine is framed between the gates. Now let's put the lines in here. All right. Again, the engine is not centered. The engine, the main part of the engine is in that right third, middle third of the picture. Okay. And you'll notice that there isn't anything that's ever actually centered. Now, it doesn't mean you can't center something, but you have to have a good reason for doing so. And also, when you have an engine or something in the shot, always give it a little lead. Don't push the engine up against the edge of the frame. You have to give the engine somewhere to go. Next slide. Again, look at this carefully and think about what you're looking at. All right, put in the lines. All right. Now you see where the engine is? Again, now this picture is about several different things. Now the main action is the engine is pushing the flat car into the loading area. And I say that because we see that there's a gentleman on the loading dock. He's a supervisor, just standing there. And then there's the guy who is unloading a piece of machinery or loading. It doesn't matter whether he's loading or unloading with the crane. Now, that part of the scene is right dead center in the frame, but that is not just the hero of the shot. That's what's going on. But you'll notice the engine is counterbalanced by the yellow truck. And look where that truck cab is. Look where the engine is. And also notice that the track and the dock and the truck and even the building leads you right into the engine. And the engine is perfectly framed by the gantry crane. Plus the tracks also lead your eye into that engine. Next slide. All right, and I think this is the last one. Is that correct, Tom?
That's correct.
All right. Again, this is, and I think there's a good reason to talk about positive and negative space here as well as composition. And that's always part of the composition. In this case, all the positive space is the dock and the engine and the tail of the boat and the crane on the dock and the buildings. But the negative space is the skyline and the water. All right. Now, the negative space really is where not much is happening. But the negative space is so important here. Look at how the water tanks and the buildings punctuate the skyline. The chimneys, the water tanks, and the buildings all give you a ragged skyline. And what does that do? That gives you a lot of feeling for depth and buildings, you know, and it makes the scene seem a lot bigger than it actually is. Let's put the lines in here. Again, look at where the engine is. Look at where the crane is. The crane is a perfect balance to the engine. You'll notice the color. We have to look at color too. The engine is black. We got a pop of color with the red. We also have a little bit of color with the boat on the bottom left. So you can see that composition is you can help yourself if you think about dividing your photo into threes, into actually 9 parts, but using these kind of lines in your head.
Also, on this photograph, everybody should notice that if you look at the foreground, the water, and you look at the buildings in the extreme back, everything is in focus. That is not easy to do. There are computer programs that can mix 5 or 6 or 10 photographs to do that, but he did this with one shot. That's not easy to do, to have the foreground and background all in focus is an observation I made when we spoke, Dennis.
Well, and of course, that's obviously not an accident. There are some tricks to doing that. One is using this tiniest f-stop that you have. Now, this may be counterintuitive, but the tiniest f-stop is the biggest number. So you're going to see numbers from like f 2.8 to, let's say, f16 or f22. Now, if you're using a cell phone, you're probably not going to see that number, all right? But I'm a professional photographer. I use a 35 millimeter camera, and the trick is to shoot at the smallest f-stop, and then not only that, that gives you the greatest depth of field. The smaller the opening in the camera, which is the f-stop, the greater the depth of field. But it's even more than that. There's a lot of other things involved, like where do you put your camera and what lens focal length do you use? Now, I used a focal length here where it was more telephoto than wide angle. Why did I do that? Well, that's another trick in photography. A telephoto lens, if you zoom in all the way, that doesn't mean that you only get a small part of the shot. What I do is I'll zoom in, but I'll move the camera back. I'll move the camera back and zoom in to get the framing that I want. And if I don't have the framing, I'll just keep moving back until I fill the frame. Well, that also gives me greater depth of field, plus it compresses everything. And when you compress it, that makes everything look closer together. Think about when you see a baseball game televised and you see the pitcher and the catcher, and they're almost right next to each other. That's because they're using an extreme telephoto lens to shoot that. Well, for model railroad photography, it's great. A lot of people think, well, you got to use a wide angle lens because there's greater depth of field. That's baloney. I can give you depth of field with a telephoto lens the same as you can get with a wide angle lens. It has more to do with how close the camera is or how far away the camera is. I can take the same shot with a wide angle lens and then back off and get the same framing with the telephoto lens.
So Dennis, if we could, not everyone has the sophisticated equipment. Let's get two takeaways for our audience before we go. If you're using an iPhone or an equivalent, one takeaway is using the what you call the thirds here. You don't have to have your subject matter dead center. In fact, it's better to have it to the left or right in the middle third of the photo. That would be one takeaway. Give me another takeaway with an iPhone that you would suggest. A quick.
Well, think about the lens. You have control over the zoom on your lens. Okay, so think about that. Don't just put the camera up and moving and think about zooming in and then backing off if you don't get the shot that you want. Think about playing with the lens, wide angle and zoom. That's one thing. The other thing is, if you're really concerned and you want to try messing around with f-stop, there is a feature on almost every good phone that if you go into your photo app on the phone, it will, there should be something called professional, or maybe it just says pro. If you go to pro, it gives you control over your f-stop and your shutter speed. Rather than having the camera control it, it allows you to control it. But if you do that, then you have to make sure that you put the camera on a tripod. And there are little tripods you can get for cell phones, or you can get a little device that will attach to a regular tripod. So
Dennis, one other thing that just very important for people with an iPhone, if you look closely in your viewfinder, which is your screen on your iPhone, you'll actually see they have a grid on there that is the grid of thirds. It's actually, if you open your phone up, everybody opens their phone up and look at it, you'll actually see it on an iPhone in the photo app. So when you're using it in the photo mode, you actually get that right there to use.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I don't have an iPhone, so I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, I would advise you to do that. And remember, again, it's not a hard and fast rule, but it should give you some, some place to start. Okay.
All right.
Another thing that works really well with the iPhones is a stability gimbal.
Yeah.
So that it helps to compensate for movement and really gives you control over how you're holding that machine. So I recommend those a lot.
Now, Phil uses the gimbal for when we were in Pittsburg, and he took all those layout shots and just makes you professional. Well, that was great, Dennis. I'll tell you, I could talk about this all day with you. I generally enjoy the subject. And again, these photographs that we present are no accident. And hopefully our viewers will now start thinking about not just taking snapshots, but just pause for a moment and think about composition and depth of field. It takes only seconds to learn this, and the improvement in your photographs goes up dramatically. Great presentation.
One quick thought. Think about creating a scene. Think about what the photograph tells you. So try to create a little scene with your photograph. And if that means putting a picture, a person in there or moving something, please do it.
Tell a story. That'll be another subject. We can talk about telling a story. That whole other subject. This was this was sponsored by Millhouse River Studios.
Millhouse River Studio builds model train working accessories that are made to last generations. Millhouse River products are built out of aluminum and have scale brass details that even the most demanding scale modeler will appreciate. Since our industry entry in 2009 with the introduction of our flagship turntable, Millhouse River has continued to add new, innovative products, like our scale transfer table, rotary coal dumper, flood coaling tower and, most recently, a working conveyor that transports coal from the dumper to the loader. All of Millhouse River Studio's stunningly realistic products are currently available in O scale. We are adding new scales on some products, including the upcoming release of an HO scale turntable featuring our aluminum construction and stunning brass details that is big enough to handle a big boy locomotive. When it comes to your layout, don't settle for less, get Millhouse River Studio.
Next up, we have another news and views. This is S-scale modeling, and this is by Jamie Bothwell. He's helps us with our as part of the staff of the show. His segment is on converting heavyweight Pullman cars, and I think you'll find this interesting. It's basically kit bashing. So, Jamie, if you will.
Sorry, I guess I was muted. Okay, there we go. Hi, how you doing? There I am. So yeah, this is this isn't anything really new. I saw this in Mainline Modeler years ago, and I also saw it in Model Railroader. Ran a couple articles on it about maybe 20 years ago. There was a time when the HO folks could only get basically one Pullman car in plastic. So they had to cut all these things up, but the HO market has expanded quite a bit. But the S-scale market, we were blessed with two very nice Pullmans. We have a 10-1-2 and a 12-1. Little history of Pullman cars, if you don't know that. A 12-1 means it's a 12-section, one drawing room car. The section is your classic Three Stooges. They're all sleeping in the upper berth. They got a curtain between the hallway. A compartment is a space that would hold generally two people, and a drawing room would hold up to three people. And, so various assorted. Those are the older time accommodations. The newer accommodations, they went to roomettes and single bedrooms and things like that. But we'll talk about that at another time. Let me just share my screen here. Get my program up. Okay, there we go. And if I tell it to see a slideshow, that should be it. Let me just shut off you guys so I can see what's going on here. Okay, so, whoops, it's not, why am I not going forward here? Okay, all right, so I'll just scroll and do it that way. All right, converting heavyweight Pullmans to get the floor plans that you want. All right, so best thing to do, start with a plan. I have these 3 volumes from Carson's Publications. They're all sorts of passenger cars. This is volume 1, obviously, and it covers wood cars and heavyweight steel cars. Here's the Pullman plan for a 12 section 1 drawing room sleeper. It's a plan 3410. 3410s are the later 12-1s. The earlier 12-1s were 2410s. This one does not have a subclass. There were a number of subclasses. I forget exactly where they went out to, but I know they had several subclasses. The 12-1 sleeper was Pullman's most popular heavyweight model. There were about 8,000 heavyweight Pullman cars, and about 4,000 of them were 12-1s. So here's the drawing. So basically what you're looking at is when you look at the sections, that's that bank of windows in the middle. There's paired windows. So like here, 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 those are all the sections. This is a bathroom down here. And then over on the right side of this drawing would be a hallway. Okay. So if we go there, there's your American Models 12-1 Pullman. Now, these are available for American Models. They still have a few left in stock, but they're also available on the used market. I saw a couple of these on eBay just the other day for a pretty reasonable price. I think that, I don't remember. I didn't look that hard because I got a bunch of them, but I don't know if it was a bid or a buy now, but around $50 for a pair of them, but then there was $20 shipping. So, $70 for a pair of these is quite reasonable, about half price of what they sell for. So anyway, so you can see that one matches up pretty well. If you look at those drawings compared to that car, those all match up pretty well. Now, Pullman made all kinds of other floor plans, and if you look here, I'm sorry, here's the room side of a 12-1. Now, if you'll notice, there's what appears to be a lot more windows here. Now you still have your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 section windows. Now, again, it's a 12 section Pullman because there's a section on either side of the aisleway which ran down the middle of the car. And a section would be an upper and a lower. So in 12 sections, normally you would be able to sleep 24 people because each section has an upper and a lower. And the reason that there are 6 sets of section windows is because each section has a pair of those windows. The general plan was that if you paid for the upper section, that was less money, but then you had a ride facing, you had the seat that faced backwards. And if you paid for the lower section, then you got the seat that faced forward. Also on this car, I would like to point out, this is your stock American Models underbody. This is supposed to represent the APWS tank, which is the water, and this is supposed to be an air tank of some sort. The air tank's not too bad. The APWS tank is terrible. So, okay, so here is your 8-section 1 drawing room 2 compartment plan. This is a 3979A, as you can see. Now you'll notice 1, 2, 3, 4 section windows and 1, 2, 3, 4 hallway windows. So it has a shorter, the shorter area with the hallway down the middle where the sections are, and a longer section where the hallway is off to one side. Again, thinking of the 12-1 of the other side that I showed you, there would be more windows on the other side. On the other side of this hallway would be where you'd have the room accommodation. So like the drawing room and the compartments would be over there, and probably a bathroom down on this end. This down here is a bathroom on that end. So, all right. So here is the aisle. Wait, I skip over something. Okay. Thought I had these organized. All right. So there's the aisle side of a 12-1, or sorry, 812 Pullman. All right. So that's what I make. That's what we're going to make here tonight. All right. So Now, I just wanted to throw this one in here quick because what you've got here is this shows the idea that Pullman used these section windows as sort of a standard construction. So, you know, this car happened to be on the top of the 812 drawing, and I just took a picture of it and added it in. But you see, this is effectively a section window, and this is effectively a section window. Whether this car had sections or not, they still use that same sort of thing. And then you see some single windows like they had in the hallway. So Pullman kind of kit bashed these cars up, you know, using standardized parts. They would put them together to make whatever floor plan they had. Also, a lot of cars were rebuilt, and so they were rebuilt, like the 12 ones, they started rebuilding a lot of those. And what they would do is whatever they wanted from one end of the car, like let's say they wanted to build a 6-section car, they would just start at the one end and keep the first 6 sections and then rebuild the other end of the car. Okay, so here is a quick comparison of the standard American models, the out-of-the-box American models car at the top, and my modification and down below. Okay, so let's just count these sections, right? So there's 1 section, 2 sections, 3 sections, 4 sections, 5 sections, 6 sections. Note that the 812 only has 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it has 4, whereas this car has 2 hallway windows or aisleway windows. The 812 has 4 aisleway windows. So what I did was I got myself a scrap body, a sacrifice body. I cut out all the windows and I filed them very carefully so I could reuse them. So I cut them out too big and I filed them down to size, and then I cut out the holes in the car and I cut them too small and I sanded them up to size so that they would fit in. And so that was what I did. So here's the piece. This is the piece that was cut out of the sacrifice body, and it's going to go in this hole in the car right here. And there you can see it back in place. And if you look real close, you can see a little bit of white right there, which says that I've got a little patching to do. So got a little bit too zealous with the razor saw. I put a piece of white paper in here so that the windows would show up a little better. So that's what you're looking at there. Okay, so here is that underside of the car where I cut away that bad APWS tank. All right, and there I cut off that air tank that was there too. And I'm going to replace those details with some better details that are available on the market, the S-scale market. But I will we'll save that for another episode. So these step ends were added. I cut these on the laser, and I made a bunch of them, and so then I add them to the American model steps to make them look a little better. But again, we'll cover that a little bit more in a future episode. So moving along, in the not too distant future, I'll show you the other side of the car, which is the room side. And I will also show you what I've done to jazz up the underframe. Those will be some other segments that I'll present in a later month. So thank you. Let's see. I'm not seeing my stop the share button come up. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Really interesting, Jamie. And I assume this isn't your first rodeo, as we say in Indiana. You've done this multiple times in the past.
What do you mean by that? Like the cutting up the cars?
Yeah, you've did this before, I would assume, or is this the first time?
That's really kind of the first time I've done it. I did get I recently purchased a really fine razor saw, and I'm kind of hoping that maybe the next ones I can just cut out the windows and just reposition them, and they'll still be enough, left of them that I won't have to sacrifice the body. So that's my next hope. So
you said you laser cut, those were laser cut plastic. Is that what you were doing?
No, the little end pieces on the steps.
Yeah, were they laser?
Yeah, they were cut with a laser. Yes.
That was plastic, styrene.
Laser cut styrene. So.
And do you have when you fill when you're cutting out windows and you're putting in styrene, you're going to use a plastic filler. Do you have one that's a preference? I guess you'll cover that in a later video.
Yeah, I've been using, I guess it's the Squadron putty.
Yeah, the military one. That's
yeah. So that's just what I've been using. I guess Tamiya might have a putty out. I haven't really experienced that one. So
I have 6 of them, at least, maybe 7. But the Squadron seems to be the best, I think.
Yeah, I went to the hobby shop and I said I need some putty, and they said this is what we've got. So
Yeah.
I have used it in the past. I've done years and years and years ago. I dabbled in military modeling, and that's what I use. So
Will you be airbrushing this when you're all done?
yes, yes, it will be airbrushed. I lean toward the Pensy, so it'll probably get airbrushed Tuscan red, but I might do it up in Pullman green. So
That will be fascinating to see how you finish it with the Squadron, how you sand it, how you prime it, how you paint it. That'll make for a very interesting segment.
well, the hope is to not have to do very much of that. So it's, there's rivets on those pieces, and the whole goal is to leave the rivets where they are and not have to sand them off or anything. So, yeah, I might try to like scrunch it together, but we'll see how it goes.
Thank you for presenting this evening. It's appreciated.
No worries. I had a good time. So, like I said, that'll be a continuing saga. Maybe not next month, but we'll see what we can figure out. So.
This segment was sponsored by the National Association of S-Gaugers.
American Models, manufacturers of.
Whoops.
Them too, but okay.
Hold on a minute. Phil.
I hate to say this, but I have lost the National Association of S-Gauge video. Hang on, let me see what's going on here. I don't know what.
That's okay. We'll do it afterwards. Next up is Phil. Phil is going to do. Phil actually won a first place at a National Model Railroad Association meet, a real contest winner. Phil doesn't like to call attention to himself and really hasn't presented too much in the past couple years, but he's quite a modeler. Proof is, if you win first place in a national contest, that's a nod that you might be a pretty fair modeler. So tonight he's going to show a model that he constructed with 3D printing and acrylic. So it's the acrylic part of it's. 3D, lots of people do 3D. He's did a unique application here, but the acrylic modeling is really something, I don't know that he ever showed this before, but it's an interesting way to build something. So Phil?
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, this was actually the models that were in the My Build last time we did it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to walk through essentially how I built this. We're going to do it in 4 segments, so it'll be about an hour. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So these, I'm going to talk about 2 different buildings, but more importantly, just the techniques used there. So these are the 2 buildings. You saw this in like I said, in the My Build. I took these both to a regional convention and a national convention. The national convention, the one on the right took first place. The one on the left took second place. Interestingly enough, at the regional convention, the one on the right was best structure. The one on the left was best in show. So they kind of reversed each other in those 2. Tonight, what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about kind of the thought process in building these, because I think one of the things when you build a structure like this, having a real design for why it was built and what it was for is important. So I started off with a couple of pictures of what the buildings look like. When you look at them very closely, they are very realistic. One of the things, obviously, we talked about interiors on the My Build, did complete interiors on them on both of the buildings. So they have a great deal of focus. One of the things, as you notice in the bottom right picture, these are on a module, and I'll show that in a moment. So they're actually right at the edge of the module. So literally the building is within 6 inches of where the public is standing. So when we take these to shows, this is something that the public can actually see up close and see the kind of modeling that you can do, and you typically only see on a layout. So talk a little bit about why I built these. I'm part of an ON30 group out here in California called the California Central Coast. I'd started off in that by building the module you see on the upper 3 pictures. This is actually a kind of a continuation of when I was a model railroader back in the 80s and early 90s. And I was doing HO, Sierra Railway, kind of Sierra Mountains in California. Really had that as a thought process. The first module I built was called Sierra City, and was built around the concept of a little town in the Sierras. And actually, the town itself was called Sierra City, so that kind of makes sense. Basically, it was a way to start building and get a model built. As I began to build models, additional modules, I did a tunnel module, which is on the bottom left, and I began to look around for a tunnel in the area of the California Central Coast and found that there was a very interesting tunnel that ran through a hill in Santa Cruz, and it's actually still there, and it's used by the current railroad that runs from Felton, which is up in the mountains, out to the coast in Santa Cruz. So if you take that train, you'll actually go through this tunnel, and it's called the Mission Hill Tunnel, because the reason it was built was that the original Spanish mission in Santa Cruz was on a hill right next to downtown. The tracks ran through downtown on the main street. The city told the railroad, you need to move the tracks out of downtown. And they ended up building a 907-foot tunnel underneath the mission. So the bottom left really was to try to recreate that. And what I did was took a bunch of photos of the area and actually tried to model it so it actually looked like the photos. And on the module, I've got photos of the area so you can actually see what it looks like and how it compares. Then the bottom right, which is the photo I used behind me on the Zoom meetups, is actually a model of what's called Wilder Ranch, which is now a state park north of Santa Cruz. This is pretty typical of what happened in this area, where when the railroads wanted to go through, the farmers had to give permission to go across their land. So to do that, the railroad would basically give them two things. They would give them a siding so they could ship their goods, and they give them a whistle stop so the wife could get to town. So this is actually a recreation of the Wilder Ranch, what would have been the siding there. Wilder was actually a creamery, so the building on the right is a creamery, and on the left there's a stockyard. I wanted to do a stockyard. This is the Banta stockyard. I thought it was pretty cool. So I'd gotten to that point, and then two things happened. I bought a 3D printer. Turns out 3D printers are relatively inexpensive, and they're really cool for model railroading. I'm going to do a set of segments probably in a month or so on a new module I'm building, and doing, for example, all the control panels have been 3D printed. Do some pretty amazing control panels with 3D printing. And at the same time, I joined the NMRA, and I started seeing some pretty amazing modeling when I went to some NMRA events. The model on the right is actually Earl Gerbavon, who's an MMR out here in California. He got his MMR, I think, early last year or late in the year before in 23. And that began to inspire me to do better modeling. So I really kind of got excited about those things and about what you could do. So I decided to do a new module. And the new module really needed to fulfill a set of needs for the club, which was having additional modules. We had done a little bit of operations as a group, and we set up at a few events. Wanted to have some new scenes and wanted to be focused on, again, this California Central Coast, the area there, basically south of San Francisco for about 100 miles down the coast. I wanted a set of components. I won't read through those, but I wanted a ship scene. I really got excited about Frenchman's model. Frenchman's River has a car float that is pretty cool in ON30. Wanted to have some switching operations. And I ended up doing a bunch of designs. As I got the designs processed along, I actually engaged at a regional event with some OPSIG members. They made some suggestions about the track plan. And then I did, if you haven't ever done it, there's a OPSIG, the RIOPS groups.io, which is essentially the OPSIG's online community. And I put up the plan, and I ended up getting, I think, 37 responses and made some really good points. If you're doing a layout, you want to get some great feedback. It's a great way to get feedback. One of the things I had not done was put a place to store idler cars by the car float. And so the idea of putting that in was added in. So in the end, this is what I ended up coming up with. This is basically a 12-foot by 2-foot, 4-foot, 2-foot 4-inch module. Actually 2 modules. See the picture on the bottom. This was taken actually about a year ago. It's a bit more finished now. The idea here is that you have a set of buildings that relate to the area. The Spreckels Sugar Warehouse, which is down there at the bottom right. It turns out Spreckels was a sugar baron. He started in Hawaii. He was really a leader in creating in the area there along the coast sugar beets as a way to produce sugar, and built a huge sugar beet processing plant and encouraged a lot of the farmers to move to sugar beets. One of the problems they had was the sugar processing is actually a multi-stage process. What they did in Hawaii was they reduced the sugar from cane to raw sugar. The raw sugar was shipped from Hawaii to San Francisco, where it was processed into consumer sugar. So that would be, granular sugar, powdered sugar, etc., the different kinds of sugar you would have. The problem that he had when he did the facility in actually in Salinas, was where the first factory was built, was he had to ship the sugar, which was raw sugar, from that factory to San Francisco for processing, and that had to be shipped on, do a bit of a drum roll here, the Southern Pacific. And the Southern Pacific, as many of you may have heard, was called the octopus because it was a monopoly in California and had very high transport rates. So actually, as you're going to see in a moment, there was a pier here in Moss Landing that was actually used to ship sugar. So what I've done is created a warehouse, and this has two reasons. One is it's a great modeling opportunity, but also from an operations perspective, it creates a place to move a lot of cars, because it turns out if you look at the number of car loads it takes to fill a ship up, it's actually a lot of car loads. So the idea was a warehouse to get the sugar put in while it was being moved to the ships. Then I wanted to do a building with a track inside, so I came up with Daniel's Transfer Company. Daniel's Transfer Express was actually a company in the Santa Cruz area in the early 1900s that did shipping and movement. Then if you look to the left, there's the Hobden Cannery. The Hobden Cannery is actually the cannery that became the Monterey Bay Aquarium. So it's actually a very recognizable structure, and you're going to see some pictures of that in a moment. Then I wanted to do a fuel pier. So I actually found the Standard Oil fuel pier, which was in Monterey, and have modeled that as the prototype. And then you see the car float on the upper left. So essentially that was the layout plan for the module that I was building the buildings to. As I looked around for where to do this, one of the things I found was there was this very interesting place at Moss Landing. I actually kind of laid out what I wanted on the module and then found a location that really fit. It turns out Moss Landing, which is, again, south of San Francisco, about 75 miles down the coast, it was actually the place the Salinas River ran out to the ocean until 1906. When the earthquake hit in 1906, the river actually changed and ran out about 5 miles farther down the coast. And this bay, or whatever you would call it, at Moss Landing, silted up. And it actually was silted up and closed to the ocean until the late 40s, when it was dredged as part of the creating new harbors for fishing in the United States. What I've actually presupposed here by recreation of history, again, we get to do that as model railroaders, is that this was never happened, that actually the river continued to go through Moss Landing, therefore it was open to the coast, and they actually dredged out the harbor there. If you've ever been to Moss Landing, right in front of this area, if you look at where all the green boxes are on the picture to the right, is actually where there's now a Duke Energy power plant. So this is literally right in front of that. And if you look on the left, the little photo on the left, which comes from Santa Cruz Trains, which is a guy online who did a lot of documentation of this area and trains in this area, is you can actually see the Pajaro Valley Consolidated Railroad, which runs from the north end, the top of the slide picture, down through, and you can actually see the Y there that runs out across to the sandbar, and then you can see the pier or the wharf that ran out into the ocean. So there was actually a railroad here, and it actually ran right in the area where on the right, you'll see that I've actually positioned the pieces of the module. So what I was able to do was take what I wanted to do on a module and find a prototype area to put the module together on. And of course, that let me do a lot of things in terms of going and taking photographs and actually using prototypical things in building the models. I put in a couple of pictures just 'cause I thought there might be some interest in kind of building large modules like this. We have the advantage, one of our members owns a cabinet shop, so we build the modules in a cabinet shop. You'll notice on the right, if you look on the right, you'll notice that the basic framing of the module is a cabinet face with 1/4-inch plywood on it, and then sides put on that. And that framing actually makes these incredibly reliable, incredibly strong, and they last a long time. I like leg pockets, so you'll see there are leg pockets there. What I did was I decided to do, because I wanted to have the water level significantly lower than the track level, it's actually built with 2-inch foam across the whole module, actually 2.5 inches of foam. So everything was built to have that foam put in place. One of the big problems you have when you put 2.5 inches of foam plus a little bit of plywood, and then you put some track work on top, you now have 3 inches between where you can mount a turnout motor and where you actually have the turnout. And that 3 inches becomes really hard to go through and get things to work properly. So one of the things I did was put, wherever there was a turnout, there's actually a box that takes the turnout up to a level that's about 1/2 inch of foam on top of that. So it's actually uniform to the rest of the module, but that recesses all the turnouts. So if you look on the right, you can see the recessed turnouts. The other thing I did was I decided that I wanted the buildings to be removable. So when I built the module, I actually built in boxes that you can see here that have in them a piece of plywood that was pre-cut, and then I built the box around the plywood so that I could drop in the buildings and take them off. What I found is when you put these things in a trailer, I typically rent a U-Haul trailer, especially if you rent one of the double axle ones, which when I get into having all the modules I needed to do, they're designed to carry 3,000 or 4,000 pounds or 3,000 pounds. When you put 400 or 500 pounds of modules in them, they have no suspension. Yes, you can let air out of the tires. I do that regularly when I rent a trailer, but they still tend to get beat up pretty good. So when I decided if I was going to build really detailed models, I wanted to be able to take them off of the layout and move them. So what you see kind of in the middle there is what this looked like after the foam was added on top of the base, and then you can see where it runs across where the turnouts are located. So this is just another picture of how this progressed. This is the module now with basic landscaping on it. I tend to use Sculpt-A-Mold, again, because these are going in the public, and the public does have a tendency to reach their fingers over the edge. Having raw foam, I don't think is a great idea, so I use Sculpt-A-Mold on everything. In fact, the module I'm using now, I bought 2 bags of Sculpt-A-Mold to actually cover everything with Sculpt-A-Mold. The reason I put this picture is you can see how the buildings were built in. You can see the boxes that were built there to hold the basic frame. And then what I did was I took a piece of masonite and cut it to the footprint of the building and glued it to that block of plywood that was underneath. So now I have a place I can drop in a building, and it sits in exactly the same position every time, but it can be removed and then be put into a case. One of the things I did was, yes.
Phil, you got a minute, so
okay, I've got 3 or 4 more slides, then I'll be done.
1 minute. Yeah.
So I took a bunch of pictures. I went and found a bunch of pictures of different things in the area. I'll talk about these in a little more detail. One of the things that was really cool was in 1906, something happened in the Bay Area and in this part of California. Turned out that caused a lot of pictures to be taken. So what you see in that picture at the upper left there is actually a view from the mainland out towards the ocean. This was actually the end of the Y that went out across, and you can see then on the upper right, the picture back at the mainland. I talked about this before. I put these into a PowerPoint to put them all together. And these are actually the designs of the buildings. And so the 2 buildings I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to go into detail next week, starting with the building on the left, which is the one that has the acrylic framing. These are the 2 buildings. So that's it.
Terrific. Well, we look forward to the construction of the buildings, because the acrylic is really a technique that's seldom practiced. In fact, the only time I've ever seen it was several years ago. You showed, I remember seeing it and I said, boy, that's a clever idea. So I think a lot of us are looking forward to see how you use that acrylic, how you build out around it. That's
Cool.
going to be good.
We have to come back next week.
That's fine. And we want to run the New Tracks donation video. And if you can find the one we missed, we'll do them back to back.
Yeah, I actually have the one that, oh, there it is.
Let's do them back to back then. Yeah.
National Capital Trains is the largest supplier of N-scale modeling products in the state of Virginia. We have been in business since 1989. We carry a full line of modeling products, specializing in N and HON3 scales. We carry a large selection of competitively priced high-quality N-scale products from Atlas, Bachmann, Digitrax, Intermountain, Cato, Microtrains, NCE, Pico, Rapido, Soundtrax, as well as Brass. For foreign railroad train aficionados, we offer a wide selection of Japanese and European prototype trains. We are located 20 miles from Washington, D.C. in Springfield, Virginia. We are a short 7-minute drive off Interstate 95. Stop in and see us for the best in N-scale. We also have online ordering on our website, including great prices and expert advice. Call us for your N-scale modeling needs and advice. Use the QR code to visit our website. We look forward to serving you.
And if we have the, here we go.
Do you enjoy New Tracks modeling? You can help support New Tracks in many ways, but donating to support the show and other activities is really appreciated. This helps pay for the expenses of producing the show, including Zoom, website, and emailing costs. You can support New Tracks financially in 3 ways. First, you can make direct contributions through Patreon. With Patreon, you can make a single or monthly contribution to New Tracks. You can also contribute through YouTube by using super stickers and super chats to donate. Finally, when you watch a YouTube replay, letting the ads run will increase the payout to New Tracks. Thank you for supporting New Tracks modeling.
Thank you for those of you that support. It's not an expensive show to produce, but there are expenses. So I encourage you to make a donation. That would be wonderful. Next up, we have Martin, our regular on Scratchbuilder's Corner. He's going to feature O-scale Exacta passenger cars, a continuation, and always an interesting program. Martin, you're on.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'll try to be interesting. So a belated Happy New Year to any and all who celebrate New Year's and are probably still recovering from it in some cases. So this is where I was last year. I foreshadowed the next adventure into the what I call the red Exacta car. Oddly, it is painted red. And this is a show. This is the picture I showed last year of this side of the car. Besides just being kind of dirty, it doesn't look too terrible, but I'll point out that there's more to than just dirt that has to be dealt with this car. You can see actually here along the top here, this lettering, Pine River and Northern. That is paint. I don't think it's hand painted. I think this is pad transfer. Rubber stamp somebody had made custom and they stamped it on there as they did it. It's too neat to be hand painted, and the other side matches it too perfectly to be. I just can't believe somebody painted it perfectly in the same location, and the same spacing with the same parts of the font and everything. Over here, where you think that's dirt, that's actually gold lettering. There's gold lettering on here. That's PR and N. oddly placed, obviously. And what you can just barely see, it says right here, Wagner sleeping car. And that's what this car really is. It's a Wagner sleeping car from the 1880s, 1870s, 1880s into the 90s. They were sort of a precursor to Pullman and a competitor of Pullman. So there were Wagner sleeping cars. These windows here are covered over on both ends with some sort of louver material. It's metal. I'll let you know how I found that out later in a couple of slides. But other than that, it's kind of dirty. The roof's in pretty good shape. It looks great until you pick it up, and it sounds like somebody put a handful of marbles on the inside. So there's obviously a problem with the inside. We have to take that apart. And that'll be the first adventure. Here's the other side. You see we've lost a little piece that was, glue has finally failed and fallen off. Not a hard fix. Nothing here is really terribly difficult. It's pretty grubby on this side. I don't know what that is. It's not just dirt. And here's the underbody. It's surprisingly detailed. I mean, this car is probably 80 years old. Maybe I neglected to mention it. This is the sides of this car are a stamped, 3D stamped, embossed copper alloy. The sides and ends are soldered together. The floor and roof are wood. It's got some weight to it. You can see all kinds of interesting stuff here. I have no idea if any of it's right, wrong, or otherwise. I'm not going to mess with it. It's in fairly decent appearance from the sides. It looks like a passenger car. Good enough. I'm not going to worry about it any more than that. But we still have to get the roof off. And I thought, well, the first thing I was going to do, take the trucks off, clean them, so on and so forth. That's not going to happen. And here's the reason why. We have a wire bridging the side frames, which are, by the way, are bronze. That wire runs under this wheel to this little post, to this wire, which comes around here, wraps around, and then goes up into this tube. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Kind of makes it a little dicey taking the truck off. Even if I could get a screwdriver on this screw, I'm not sure I'd want to take them off. And the other one at the other end has a similar arrangement. What the heck is this? And that is the screw that holds the roof on. There's one at each end. Whoop. Take my hand off that thing. And knows what those screws are. They're 2.5-inch long screws. So, you start backing these out and backing them out and backing them out, and you begin to wonder, how far does this go? Well, it goes through the entire car body into the roof. And once the screws were out, the roof just popped off smooth as glass. It was amazing. I've never been able to take a roof off such a car so easily. It's very, very well fitted. It's a very precise job. Whoever built this thing did a great job of the assembly and the soldering work, putting the sides and the roof together. So it makes my life a lot easier to taking it forward. So 2.5-inch wood screws. Not a common model railroading passenger car component. Here's the inside. Well, we have a little white light bulb in a fixture, which is pretty cool. I mean, I wish I could find 5 or 6 more of these. I think they're actually pretty nice, and I'd like to use them in other cars. But I have no idea where they come from. Like I said, this is 80 years ago. And here's where other wires come from. Those wires from the tube underneath. Well, there's a tube on the inside, and this wire goes down on the inside and meets by friction contact with that tube. So the wire coming up from the underbody versus the wire in the top don't actually connect. They just rub against the brass tube on the inside of the body. And there it is. Oh, here's that brass tube right here. And nicely, well, let's see. Yeah, this end's labeled X. So whoever put this together, this is the X end. The other end is O. Somebody was playing tic-tac-toe, apparently. But whichever it is, it makes my life a lot easier. I don't have to add my marks to reassemble it. I know the X end of that roof goes at this end of this car. I just have to thread that wire down this tube, the wire down the tube on the other end. It slides right back together. I was actually pretty amazed. This is what's left of the interior. Pretty heinous. But we'll dress this up. We'll improve this a lot. It needs a new interior. And I'm not going to backdate it to 1880, 1870. We're going to mishmash it together because that's what was in it to begin with. So here's the other end, which is, there's the other brass tube. This is the O end. It's a nice little cabinet that somebody built. And there was another, I think there's another cabinet somewhere here that I salvaged. And these are the lovely pieces that were rattling around on the inside. Yeah. These are white metal chairs. There's about a pound of lead here. Some odd figures. Young lady missing part of her leg. Part of a table. Probably belongs to one of these two. I don't think we're going to use any of this stuff. This is all going to go away and get replaced. So we got stuff to do with this car. I got to clean everything. That's the first step. Sit down with a sponge, damp makeup removal tabs. Wipe everything down, clean everything down. Don't ruin anything if I can help it. Just water. I'm not going to use anything else at this point. A little bit of damp with water. Wipe it all down. Keep wiping it down until whatever I'm wiping it down with comes away clean. Just get the dirt off it. In some cases, that's a small box of Q-tips. Very patiently, just go over everything until you get it clean and stop. Then we got to build a whole new interior. Okay, we don't have to do the whole interior, but we have to get a little creative because that is not a standard passenger car interior space. We're going to need some tables, some chairs, some furniture, other odds and ends. Fix a few roof issues. Okay, the roof issues are minimal. I'm not even going to paint this roof, repaint it. The other car, I recovered the entire roof with tissue, napkins, painted it. This roof I'm going to leave alone. The quality of the paint on it versus the wood grain, it doesn't really show through noticeably. I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, the rest of the exterior. This is where it's a challenge. Cleaning it, yes, obviously clean it. A lot of cleaning. Then I have to get rid of that white lettering and the gold lettering without destroying the red paint underneath of it. And I'm not optimistic about that, to be honest. Removing a layer of paint off a layer of paint, even with tiny Q-tips and tiny brushes and whatever type of material, magic solvents you want to use, something's going to get ruined probably along the way. And eventually, I guess I'll probably end up just accepting that as being the result and finding a red that's close enough that it doesn't detract too badly and probably end up repainting the letterboard. And then I want to highlight that Wagner sleeping car lettering, that raised embossed lettering. I got to go find my artist's gold leaf paint, aged gold leaf paint, wherever it is hiding in one of the drawers in the cabinet. And a very, very small brush and many hours without caffeine. Keep my hands steady. So that's where we're going to go. And that's where we're going to go next week. So we're stopping right here. And we'll give you the rest of it next week and we'll wrap it up.
Thank you very much, Martin. Tell me, do we know much about Exacta? That's the manufacturer, is that right?
Yeah, they're actually more known for more modern cars and locomotives. they did a lot of diesels in the 30s, 40s.
That would be an interesting program unto itself. You know,
Well, I don't have any of them. I do know some people who do, and actually Jim DeBruin, who used to be the O-Scale archaeology column in the O-Scale Trains magazine, was on our show. Oh gosh, 2 years ago, 3, whatever. Maybe we can ask him to come back and talk to us about Exacta.
yeah, let me do that.
All
Thank
right,
you.
I'll find his email for you.
Thank you for this evening's presentation. And now we'd like to run our scholarship ad.
Are you a model railroader going to college in academic year 2025-26? If you are pursuing a STEAM degree, apply for the New Tracks Modeling Mentoring Scholarship. For the 2025-26 academic year, 3 $2,000 scholarships will be available. You can apply online at the QR code shown or on the New Tracks Modeling website. Model railroaders can support the New Tracks Modeling Mentoring Scholarship, the only national scholarships for model railroaders from a nonprofit organization. Donate online on Zephy. All donations are tax deductible.
One of the reasons that we're really here is for that scholarship. I mean, obviously, we want to promote modeling, but the youth are so critical to the future of the hobby. I encourage you to make donations to the scholarship program. Next up, we have a new feature by Steve Sherrill. It's going to be a regular feature. We're calling it Narrow-Minded for us narrow gauge people. And what Steve's going to do is he's going to have shows himself, and he's going to feature manufacturers and modelers who practice narrow gauge. There's your introduction, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, as Thomas said, I guess I'm a narrow gauger. Been in O-30 now for about 25 years. I was in HO-3 previous to that. So I think the question is, for O-30, what's actually new in O-30? And the real answer to that is probably very little, since Bachmann was the major manufacturer putting out the O-30, has stopped production for a while now. So what's happened? Well, with the availability of 3D printers, we've had entrepreneurs who have come forward to offer production of affordable engines and rolling stock in O-30 and an entirely new popular gauge, O-18. Tonight we have Carroll Creek Design, which is one of those entrepreneurs who is undertaking the production of O-30 and O-18 with 3D printers. And so I'd like to introduce the creators. That's Bob Gelmacher and Ryan Vegas. Bob is a regular on here, and Ryan, this is his first time. So Bob, tell us a little bit about your design group and exactly what you're producing, if you would.
Okay, well, I'm going to go share a screen. We have a little presentation. And I want to make sure everybody is seeing that. Are you?
Yes.
Okay. And like Steve said, Ryan and I have decided to form a partnership under the name of Carroll Creek Design. And what we're going to do is we want to try to address some of the needs of the ON30 and the ON18 market. And in the beginning, I think for both of us, it really started as personal needs and interest. And here are some of the personal needs that I found that I needed and that I could create using 3D printing. I'm always looking for spacers or washers or bushings or something, things that I can't buy. So in the beginning, we were able to make those. Also down here in this particular block, some of the spacers that we use for scratch building. And also I didn't have any wheel pullers, so we decided to make the wheel pullers. The second thing that really was the driving force behind all this was, I call it the Steves effect. And the Steves are Steve Sherrill and also Steve Fisher. Steve passed away earlier in the year, and we talked about him, but both of the Steves, when I got to know them and when Ryan and I would talk to them, always had an idea about what would really benefit the hobby, what kind of rolling stock. So we decided to take those suggestions and try to do something with them. Our primary focus is to design and create quality ON30 and O18 models, but not only those particular scales and gauges, realizing that there could be other folks that are needing things in, HO or even O scale. So, but even though our primary object is for the ON30 and ON18, and also to assist those modelers that require customizing unique models, because I think everybody that's in the hobby realizes that you can't always buy what you need at a hobby store, and a lot of times we just have to make it. Also, and this is kind of a little add-in, is customize and create custom control panels using Kevin Hunter's touch toggle technology. And lastly, I added this in, it's to make a little bit of money. I think anybody that's in business, if they don't have that in the back of their mind of why they're in business, the fact is they're trying to make a little bit of money to support their hobby or with their life. They're not telling the whole truth. So anyway, those are the reasons why we got into the business. Our capabilities as a business is we use a number of different programs to do the design, and everything you see on here tonight, we're going to be talking about a lot of products, are all designed by us. But we use Autodesk Inventor and Autodesk Fusion 360, which are very, very flexible and comprehensive programs. We have access to Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator in case we have to do any artwork, Microsoft Visio, and Autodesk Eagle in case we have to do any circuit boards for these things. From a 3D printing standpoint, between us, we have 3 resin printers. These are the Elegoo Saturn 3 Ultras, which are very, very good printers, and 3 Prusa MK4s, which are our filament printers. We also have access to a laser. So if we have to do things like cutting wood decks for flat cars or anything along those lines, we have access to those machines. Matter of fact, we own those machines, so we can do it. I'm going to go through a series of pictures right now, and Ryan, please speak up at any time. And these are some of the products that we've offered. We've been to a couple of trade shows. We haven't been in business that long, only about a year, but we went to the Harrisburg show last year, and we also went to the Pittsburg Narrow Gauge show, and we found that the products that we had were well received, and we were able to sell quite a few of these. So we think that this is an opportunity for us to actually help the hobby out a lot. And we also are getting a lot of input from different vendors, but from different customers as to things that they would like to see. And that's the genesis of a lot of these products. Here you see a couple of ON30 or an ON30 Shea, and also an ON30 or an ON18 Shea and an ON18 Porter. The picture that we have on the right-hand side is one of the Sheas that's been doctored up a little bit. All of these are using the Cato 1109 drives. On the Porter, and in particular, we've offered that with a number of variations. Here it is with a longer full wood cab, a short wood cab, a steel cab, and then there's also a couple of variations on the actual stack configuration. We're not only looking at steam, but we're also looking at diesel or electric. These are two, the Fisher and the Barkus steeple cab are 2 cabs that were, or 2 engines that were developed by Ryan. The 2 diesels that you see here were developed by me. And again, all of these are using the Cato 1109 drives. These are one of the ideas that we got from Steve Sherrill. We needed a tender that would go behind some of the geared locomotives. That would also be a place where we could put batteries and also the receiver for dead rail. So we're offering 3 of those. One is one with coal or wood. One is a rounded corner tender, and another one is a fluted tender. All of these have the tops that come off so that you can get easy access to the electronics or battery. And on this particular one, the wood coal tender, we have a drive that has geared wheels on it. The gears aren't functioning, but somebody at Harrisburg said it would be nice to have something that would go behind a shay. So we actually developed that truck, and that trunk can go on any of these particular tenders. On these, trucks, wheels, and couplers are included. Ron, you want to talk about your ON18 cars here?
Yeah. The ON18 cars started actually at the Harrisburg show also. Al, Judy, and I had a quick conversation at the very beginning of the show. And by the end of the show, that night when I went home, we developed about 4 different cars based off our discussion. And the 4-axle cars use standard N-gauge, any N-gauge truck you can put on. Typically, if you can see in the picture, you'll see the silver wheels. If you walk around the train shows and try to pick up some very old Rapido or Atlas N-scale cars with the big old chunky wheels, they seem to work the best in the ON18. We do have a truck that we are trying to develop now for the ON18 that'll take the N-scale wheels, and the truck itself will be a little bit more proportional to what the ON18 car will look like. But right now, that's what we're offering. We also, as you see on the bottom right hand, is a 2-axle that we just came out with. Those 4-axle ones are typically about 13 feet long. The 2-axle ones are going to be 8 foot long. Couplers for those, virtually any KD. I use the HO 146s. They give a lot more swing capability. A lot of these are being used on micros. That's the new fad going around, and everybody can get into a micro fairly inexpensively. And it can be done fairly quickly. You can complete a micro in less time than a layout. That's where I think what a lot of people with space problems that have a layout, they can do a micro, and these cars are going to fit that. They can take down. We've had one gentleman in Florida actually do a 8-inch radius or an 8-inch curve with the 2-axle ones, pulling our shay around with them. So overall, they've been pretty good. We're going to have more of a line of the 2-axle ones coming out. We have a few different style cabooses.
I'm going to show those.
2-axle.
Yeah, I'm going to show those, Ryan, the cabooses.
The overall, we're just when we go to these shows, a lot of the guys are coming up talking with us what they want, what they're looking for in an ON18. They're just getting into it, and the ON30 stuff. That's, as Bob said, that's really what we're focusing on. What the customer's wanting, performance wise. We're trying to keep the cost down. These are a good basic starting points. You can detail them as much as you want. You can do just about anything you want to them, but they're a good starting point and a fairly inexpensive starting point. Most of the 4-axle ON18 cars are $20 or less. The 2-axle ones typically about $15 or less in a kit form, and they're all printed. Ready to go. Some of the ON30s that Bob have showing here, these are ready to run ON30. Wooden desks, weighted cars. These have been very popular. The details are pretty incredible for what Bob has designed on these cars. And that 12-foot flat car works great on a lot of different micros.
And again, these come ready to run. They have trucks, metal wheels, and I'm using the 148 couplers on these. Here's a couple more of the ON30 cars and an 018 car that Ryan has developed.
We've done a lot of the steel gondolas for the ore. A lot of customers have asked for that, so we did that in an ON18.
Gotta wrap up, guys. Okay.
Are we out of time?
Yeah. So
Yes?
give me a minute to conclude, but
Okay, I'll go real quick on it. These are some of the gondolas we have. Again, they're ready to run. Some of the cabooses in ON30 and ON18 that Ryan has worked on and developed. More cabooses. We talked about custom work. Here's two examples of it. This was a arched trestle that we had to build for our club, and this was a car where we had to actually extend the roof and decrease the width of the roof for a friend of ours. Some of the other miscellaneous details that are capable of 3D printers. Here's where you can find us, either on email, Facebook, or on the web. And like I said, please consider us in Carroll Creek if you have any needs that 3D printing can do for you. And that's all we have.
Well, that was very interesting. Steve, you want any concluding comments?
Well, I would just like to say that most of the ON18 stuff that they are producing, the Shays, the Porters, they actually come in parts, 3 or 4 different parts. So they're easy to paint, and you can detail them up as any way you want. They're made for detailing. And I think that they're well worth the money. And the 109 drive just clips right in. So you have an excellent DC drive in there. And the drive units are less than $20 a piece.
We don't have to squeeze this in the last 5 minutes. We can do a part 2, cover those slides that you breezed through. So, because we ran out of time, feature those drives. I mean, we give you a little license we could reschedule you next week or the week after, your discretion. Finish this up. Fair enough?
Yeah, fine with me.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
That'll be good.
Yeah, don't mean to rush you, but
Bob and Ryan, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, now it's self-centered because the next presentation's mine. but thank you for this evening here. So next up is myself, a update of the Shantytown, which I started back in 2023 when I moved to, when I downsized my home and tore apart 15 years of the rustic buff and old Gothic. This was the first scene I started on. This is an overview. This covered bridge was from the previous layout, the original rustic buff and old Gothic. Everything else you see here is new for the new railroad, the new version 2. So these are all scratch-built structures. This is a Frenchman River Model Works resin kit. This is a scratch build of my own. So I'm just going to show you some of the, I'm going to show you the Shantytown, basically building by building. I started back in June of 23. I moved into the new house just 2 months before. Shantytown has 12 unique scratch-built structures, 1 kit bashed from Foggy Mountain Models, 1 guest structure from Alan Carroll, he passed away in 2022, 3 Frenchman River Model Work boats. I regularly swap out my scratch build for one of the fishing trawlers from Frenchman River, a scratch-built crane skiff, and there's over 120 inches, 10 feet of scratch-built fencing. That's a lot of strip wood. And there's 51 figures and 3 dogs. They're all artista. So that's the stats on Shantytown. As soon as you walk into my layout room, this is the first thing you see. There's a standard gauge line right next to a narrow gauge line. And I'll show you why I do that in a moment. And then I put up a billboard there with these period advertisements. Advertisements like this, billboards can date your layout. So you convey, mine is, for example, 1930. So I search Google for 1930 advertisements. Reason I put that O gauge, standard gauge, 3 foot 8 1/2 inches right next to my ON 30 line with 2 box cars is this is a easy way to explain what narrow gauge is to a visitor. They're both O scale, but one is considerably smaller than the other because it's narrow gauge. Just takes that mystery out of trying to explain what ON 30 is. This is that kit bashed Foggy Mountain models. They make it as a depot. I made it as a maintenance shed, put my Artista figures there. See, I've weathered everything, weathered the track. The devil's in the details, yeah. This is moving to the left towards into the layout room. That is my John Allen scratch built ON 30 O scale engine house. There's another shot of the John Allen engine house. It's instantly recognizable to model railroaders that visit my layout that it's a John Allen themed engine house. Again, more billboards to date the layout, to place it in the late 1920s, 1930. This is a heavily kit-bashed Broadway limited locomotive with a whaleback tender and all kinds of details added from Weissman models. It actually now runs. I bought a sacrificial unit and placed a new drive in here. Moving more down in towards Shantytown is the Milford Hotel, named for where I went to high school, Milford, Connecticut. There's the Shantytown Depot. There's a nice close-up of it. Again, everything's heavily weathered. Well, not heavily weathered, weathered. And again, more signature advertisements. There's an overlook. You can see to the right is the John Allen engine house, a series of billboards so you don't see that backdrop photograph right at the edge of the layout. That's a technique. So in my layout, that photograph backdrop, you never see the edge of the layout. I always have either a building or a fence or something to give the illusion of depth. This is a nice shot looking down from the engine house. This is where I'll be because Jim made me the host of the show. This is future place. I featured this structure on New Tracks some time ago. It's a condemned structure. At least this one's condemned, and these are well run down. This is only about 1 inch in depth. It was made specifically for this spot. There it is with train going around the tracks. I don't have a lot of time this evening, but I like to do Mr. Brennan will talk about this, how you create a story within your photograph. So we got a train coming here, a guy walking his dog, this guy looking over. This adds visual interest to the shot, makes you, Al Judy was a master at creating these little scenes. They tell a story, imaginary story. Let your imagination run when you look at the scenes. I urge you all to book passage on the Titanic or the Lusitania. Very safe, very fashionable ride here in the roughly 100 years ago. This is in front of the depot, little shoe shine thing. This is looking down the road that leads to Shantytown. I have all these bait shops, which I whimsically named after Gilligan's Island. That's Gilligan's 3-hour tour bait shop. There's Thurston's bait and tackle. Some fortunes go up, some go down. Little humor. There's a lot of detail on here. And these, like Mr. Brennan said, these are all composed photographs. These aren't Tom snaps a photo and pops it into PowerPoint. There's a lot of lighting involved, a lot of cropping, it's a lot to this. Now we're into Shantytown. This is Jim Kello's Seafood. Fresh, 7 p.m. every Wednesday. These are the menus: New Tracks Modeling, Build Along, the Caboose, the Rustic Buff and Old Gothic. This is more of Shantytown. This is the 1930, the height of the Great Depression. So everything on my railroad has, everywhere you look, it's basically run down. There's hobos, tramps, all up and down the line. Clothes hanging on the line. People passed out. That's my son, Lieutenant Commander. Nice close-up. This is floor tile, the old-fashioned floor tile. I don't know what it's made out of, hopefully not asbestos, but I just took some pliers and snapped. Then I built the wall with super glue and painted it, weathered it. Little fire. This is wood from the front yard, just cut. Everybody's having a grand old time. There's no jobs to be had. A lot of people lost their homes, lost their livelihood. If you move forward to the bait shops, it's an industry you can model. Another bait shop there on the left. These guys are playing cards. Skippers. This was featured in a build along, a Watch Me Build a couple years ago. So I've weathered all the boards. Nothing fits correctly. Everything's hacked up and down, and barnacles are nothing more than ballast that I painted gray. I cast resin here and put Mod Podge on top. Everything's just highly weathered throughout the layout. Consistent look of, well, it's the Depression. The Professor's fishing tackle. More tramps here off to the side. Passed out. An old car, basically abandoned, weathered. Now a view of the harbor. This ship is removable. This is scratch built. This is a Frenchman River Model Works resin kit. There's another view of the harbor. There's the other Frenchman River Model Works fishing boat. So at any time I can swap one out for the other. This one's fixed in place. And this is a Frenchman Rivers model as well. It's basically a sunken boat. These piers are set here so that the boats don't run into the railroad's bridge. And everything has an advertisement on it to further date the railroad. Another composed. Every photo you've seen is basically composed. I encourage you, I know I'm off the beaten track, but anybody that would like to see the Rustic Buff and Old Gothic version 2, I'm about an hour south, 45 minutes south of Indianapolis. I've had a few visitors. There's a close-up of my scratch-built trawler, and that this was all Imagineered by me. These are metal washers. That's a dowel rod. That's just plastistrut. And that is a overview. And I took this photo this evening. See the debris on the shore. I'm going to add more debris here. I mean, model railroads are never complete, but I did want to get when you enter my railroad room, at least 6 to 8 feet of this somewhat complete. And I'm working right to left. So thank you for watching this evening. Now I can switch to being the host. If we are ready, I'd like to show something on the upcoming My Build. If Phil has that paired. Phil. There we go. Let's do a full screen on that. But Chris, if you're on, you want to talk about this, oh, go back to that if you don't mind.
Sure. It's yeah, the next My Build is January 22nd. It's a free for all, so whatever you've got, whatever you're working on, please send us an email with those pictures in it. And please get those to me by January 17th. It's going to be kind of rushed because we've got the Amherst coming up the next week, and I got to try to get as much as I can done as early as I can. That way I can prep during the week and have everything out the door, because I've got to be up in Springfield on Thursday afternoon. So anyway, please for that free for all, please give us an email with those photos by the 19th, and I will actually share screen because I have one more thing to show here, and waiting for permissions. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. So that was the slide we had, is please get your photos to me by January 19th. That way we can make sure that we get everything put in a presentation and ready for that Wednesday night. And let's see if I can get to the next one. The next My Build challenge is Scratch Builds and Kit Bashes, and that will be on February 19th. And please send me your photos by February 16th to participate. One thing, as I was going through trying to build up this slide, I came across that picture in the upper left corner. Tom, is that one of yours?
No, that looks like that fell out west. Who does that? Oh, what is his name? I can't remember his name, but I know who it is because I've watched the build of that. No, but it looks like one of mine, but I'll get you the name next time. We'll talk. I'll give you a buzz tomorrow. We'll talk about your show. I do want to close with the My Build and say that it is by far one of the most popular segments that we have on New Tracks. I closely monitor the number of views of the breakouts of these segments over the past 2 years. And that's one of our most popular segments. And what's really unique about it is it's our participants, our members, our viewers. And so I just want to encourage you that we always need material, and let's get some more active presentation this year. Fair enough?
Yep, sounds good.
All right, and I'll give you a buzz.
And we forgot about Greg. You around, Greg?
We're good.
Yeah, that's okay. I don't have anything to add. You covered it all.
All right, I'm sorry. Yeah, Happy New Year, Greg. And as Greg would say, if you are new to the show, please include a photo of yourself and also a description of those photos. That way, if you can't get online, if you have issues getting in there, then we can at least talk somewhat intelligently about the photos that you're showing. Or maybe if you're not able to make the show, but you want to present the photos anyway, you can help us out that way. So,
okay,
for that plug in there.
Thank you, and I'll give you a call. You're around tomorrow, yeah? Thank you. Well, that basically, we're getting close to the close of the show here. We're going to feature Father Ron as a closing the show this year. And then following Father Ron, we're going to have the Caboose, which will feature the Pittsburg High Rail, quote unquote, millionaires layout. So stick around for that. And Father Ron, you're on.
O God, as we create and miniature the world around us, may we marvel at the beauty and genius which created the world and instilled in us a portion of your great knowledge and wisdom. Give success to the work of our hands, O God. Amen.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Father Ron, for helping me personally through Al Judy's passing last year. Your discussion was really quite amazing, or very moving to me anyway. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Phil, if you would.
Yep, Tom. So this was another layout from the narrow gauge convention in Pittsburgh. This one's not really a narrow gauge layout, but still it was pretty amazing. And I'll go ahead and I'll run this, and we'll let Tom and Jeff, who both were there, you'll see them in the video, can comment about it. But it was a pretty amazing layout in a custom built, I think it was pushing 30 by 40 foot space basement. What's most impressive as you look through this, you'll actually see the entrance, which comes from a lower level, call it family room crew lounge, which you'll also see basically about 4 steps down and then a walkway and 4 steps back up. So instead of being a duck under, it's a walk under. And it was actually clearly built as part of the original foundation of the house, because in the bottom of it, there was actually a drain. So just an amazing layout. So with that, we'll go ahead and kick this off. And as Tom noted, look under the layout as you see under the thing and see the number of boxes of additional equipment that's under the layout.
This layout fills a room that is, what do we estimate, 1,200, 1,500 square feet. Rolling stock locomotives.
Your voice is breaking up, Tom.
Control system looks like it's something out of an industrial PLC, operator interfaces. It's not a simple line out transfer. Looks like they're looking at an industrial plant when you see their control system. We're imagining this took years.
You're still breaking up, Tom.
Yeah, Tom, I think the storms must be affecting your internet. One of the things I personally really liked about this was the kind of combination of excellent modeling, but still kind of the feel of the Lionel of not having a lot of weathering. It was very interesting, but it's just an amazing layout. Look at the garage with the car in it. And the gentleman here closest to us in the gray shirt's the owner. And the shoulder protection there for the mine was kind of cool too. It's the black pipes there. That's the walk-in there. Those are the handrails. I'm going to see them here again in a moment.
Well, folks, that concludes the show this evening. I want to thank the production team. There's a lot of people that make this possible, and couldn't do it without you. And we'll see you all next week. Remember, we're trying to get this show, I want to double, triple, quadruple the views. And it starts with you guys. As Jim used to say, tell your friends. Hope you like the new format. We'll keep getting better and better at it. But thank you for watching, and good night.